It began with a faint ripple of sound, like the distant chatter of a radio left on in a neighbor's garage. My home, a 6-acre oasis on the outskirts of Oak Crest, Kentucky, was my hard-won paradise. Nestled among rolling pastures and ancient sycamores, the sprawling single-story house was a labor of love-reclaimed barnwood floors, vaulted ceilings with exposed beams, and a crescent-shaped pool that sparkled under the midday sun. The outdoor pavilion, with its limestone fireplace and cedar pergola, was where I'd spent decades hosting barbecues for my old masonry crew, the air thick with laughter and the sizzle of steaks. No homeowners association, no meddling busybodies, just the quiet sovereignty of land I'd bought with every penny of my savings. Then came the footsteps. At first, I dismissed it as kids from the nearby Willow Grove estates, their voices carried by the breeze across the open fields. Sound plays tricks in these wide spaces. But one evening, as I nursed a beer on the deck, I spotted them. 2 girls, maybe 15, snapping photos by my pool. One posed with a dramatic hand on her hip, the other giggled, and they vanished into the twilight before I could shout. The next morning, I found a crumpled juice pouch by the pavilion. The day after, a plastic spoon lay discarded near the pool steps. By the 5th day, I stepped outside and felt my heart lurch. Strangers were in my yard, dozens of them, acting like they'd been invited to a county fair. A man in a polo shirt lounged in my Adirondack chair, scrolling his phone. 3 teens splashed in the pool, their towels strewn across the deck. A woman in a floral dress fiddled with my grill, muttering about lighter fluid. What in God's name is going on? I snapped, striding across the grass. The man looked up, unfazed, and pointed to the split-rail fence separating my land from the HOA's manicured lawns. Eleanor said it was fine. Community luau, right? My blood ran hot. Eleanor Caldwell, president of the Willow Grove Estates HOA, a woman with a smile like a steel trap and a knack for turning neighbors into foot soldiers. I hadn't spoken to her since she'd tried to guilt me into joining her neighborhood beautification scheme 4 years ago, complaining my wildflower meadow was untidy. Luau, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. This is private property. Get out. One of the teens, dripping wet, pulled out a folded papera flyer with a Google Maps screenshot. My house and my pool are labeled in bold, Willow Grove Community Oasis. My address was printed below, clear as day. Eleanor sent this, he said, shrugging. I snatched the paper, my hands trembling with fury. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an assault. Out. I growled, pointing to the gate. Now. They muttered but complied, climbing over the fence back to HOA territory. I padlocked the gate, hammered a private property, no trespassing sign into the ground, and stormed inside to pour a bourbon, staring at that flyer like it was a wanted poster with my name on it. The next morning, my mailbox held a pristine envelope, sealed with the Willow Grove Estates Homeowners Association crest. The letter inside was a masterwork of sanctimonious drivel, accusing me of aggressive conduct toward invited community members and undermining a sanctioned neighborhood gathering. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound because the audacity was breathtaking. This wasn't a clerical error. It was a calculated strike. I pinned the letter to my fridge, a grim reminder of the fight brewing, and started digging. That Google Maps tag gnawed at me. I pulled up the site, and there it was, a pool marked as a public space. I filed a correction, attached my deed, and checked the edit history. The label had been added 3 months ago by a user called Willow Grove _official. My jaw tightened. This was no accident. I called my lawyer, Harold, a weathered ex-judge who'd seen every shade of property dispute in his 40 years. This ain't a mix-up, Ben, he said after reviewing my title. They're building a paper trail. You need to lock this down tight. That afternoon, a neighbor I barely knew, Ruth, a retired nurse from the HOA, side-slipped me a photo of the community bulletin board. It showed a flyer with my address, advertising open recreational access to my pool, endorsed by HOA leadership. Summer memories await, it read. Then the social media posts started rolling in. A picture of my locked gate, captioned, "Some folks think they're above the community." Another, from a guy named Doug, whined, "My kids used to swim here every July. Now it's all barbed wire and bad vibes." I'd never heard of Doug. The worst was Eleanor's HOA page, announcing that temporary shared access was under reconsideration due to one resident's regrettable hostility. Then I found the email. An anonymous forward, a PDF of an HOA newsletter with a supposed message from me, thanking Eleanor for coordinating community pool access and pledging full cooperation for neighborhood use. It was a forgery, a sentence lifted from an old email I'd sent her about a shared fence repair, twisted to fake my approval. Harold's verdict was blunt. That's a fraud, no question. I installed security cameras that night high-res, motion-triggered, with cloud backups. If Eleanor wanted to play dirty, I'd have her every step on tape. The next salvo came from the county zoning board. A certified letter arrived, announcing a review to reclassify transitional zones near Oak Crest. My address was listed, buried in jargon about community integration initiatives. It was a stealthy move to blur my property lines. Harold filed objections, while I dug into the property's history. The previous owner, Dr. Walter Grayson, had mentioned an HOA skirmish when I bought the place. I found his old closing binder in the basement, including a 2011 letter rejecting the HOA's attempt to claim his land. Eleanor's name was there, even then, pushing the same tired playbook. I tracked Walter down in Lexington. "She's still at it," he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. "Tried to call my koi pond a neighborhood asset. I shut her down with legal muscle. Watch yourself, Ben." A week later, a plain brown package appeared on my porch, with no sender listed. Inside was a rolled-up blueprint, marked with frantic notes in blue ink. HOA's 2024 expansion plan. You're not on their mailing list. I spread it across my dining table, and my stomach sank. My property was shaded green, labeled Phase 1 Community Annexation, with my pool circled as Primary Recreational Core. Arrows pointed to my pavilion, captioned Future Event Plaza. I taped the blueprint to my office wall, added a second camera aimed at the fence, and felt the fight settle into my core. This wasn't about a pool party. This was about my home, my life's work. I'd planned a quick trip to the county office to meet a zoning contact Harold had arranged, hoping to kill this annexation nonsense before it grew legs. I left the cameras rolling and the dog inside. When I returned, the air felt wrong. A crushed paper cup lay by the mailbox. The side gate was unlatched. I rounded the corner and froze. My yard was a circus. 30 people, maybe more, sprawled across the lawn. Kids shrieked in the pool, their floats bobbing like buoys. A guy in a Hawaiian shirt hooked up a Bluetooth speaker, blasting pop music. Beer cans littered the pavilion table. A woman in a sundress waved cheerily. "Hey, Ben. Eleanor said you were cool with this." Amazing setup. I didn't respond. I stormed inside, flipped the breaker to kill the pool's power, and grabbed my phone. The music cut off, and confusion rippled through the crowd. I stepped out and roared, "You're trespassing on private property. Leave now." Most scattered, grumbling. One woman snapped, "No need to be a jerk about it." Then I saw him, a boy, maybe 16, slumped by the pool steps, clutching his wrist. Blood streaked the tiles. His friend stammered. He slipped diving in. I asked if they'd called for help. They hadn't. Eleanor had told them, "No cops unless it's critical." I dialed 911. EMTs and a sheriff's deputy arrived fast. I handed over the footage, every trespasser, every can, every kid who'd raided my fridge. One guy had posted a selfie in my pavilion, captioned, "Living large." The deputy asked about pressing charges. "Not yet," I said, "but I will." Inside, the damage was infuriating. Dirty plates in the sink, a half-eaten pizza on the counter, my coffee maker still warm. Under the pavilion bench, I found a plastic bag with a bloody rag, Sumion's attempt to hide the boy's injury. I spent the night organizing footage, labeling files, and uploading backups to 3 servers. This wasn't a prank. This was an invasion, orchestrated with chilling precision. The boy's injury, a broken wrist, a hospital stay, shifted the stakes. His parents were furious, and the sheriff took notice. Harold pushed for HOA records, but they stonewalled like a fortress. Then came an email, no sender, just 4 attachments and a line. "You're not alone. Dig here." The first was an HOA memo, calling my property a threat to neighborhood cohesion and outlining passive annexation strategies. The second was a spreadsheet. My land was flagged red as high resistance, priority target. The third was a PowerPoint pitching a Willow Grove community hub on my property, with renderings of a clubhouse where my pool stood. The fourth was meeting minutes, Eleanor's name unredacted, proposing friendly engagement with me, with contingency plans for resistance. Then came the knock, well past 10 p.m. It was Paul, a jittery HOA accountant who lived 3 streets over. He handed me a USB drive, his hands shaking. I resigned, he whispered. Eleanor thinks I'm loyal, but this is wrong. The drive held audio files Eleanor's voice, plotting to manipulate zoning records, fake community petitions, and forge an email from me for optics. She'd laughed, saying, "If Ben pushes back, we'll paint him as the villain." The day of the party, she'd sent a group chat memo, ordering number 911 calls to protect the annexation narrative. A kid had been hurt, and she cared about her story. I sent the files to Harold and the sheriff. The war was on. Court was a beast of its own. I'd faced judges before building permits, contract disputes, but this was my home, my life, on the line. Eleanor sat across the room, her lawyer a slick kid who looked like he'd memorized every loophole but never thrown a punch. She avoided my gaze, her face a mask of righteous indignation. The judge, a woman with steel-gray hair and a no-nonsense stare, seemed exhausted before we began. The charges were heavy: criminal trespass, property damage, document fraud, and civil claims for defamation and misrepresentation. Eleanor's lawyer spun a tale of community confusion, calling the map's tag a minor error. Harold waited, then unleashed hell. Exhibit A: camera footage of the party, the injury, the chaos. Exhibit B: county records proving my land's independence. Exhibit C: the forged email with forensic proof of tampering. Exhibit D: Eleanor's audio admitting fraud. Exhibit E: Paul's documents exposing the HOA's land grab. Exhibit F: Walter Grayson's video testimony recounting Eleanor's failed attempt on his property a decade ago. Exhibit G: the boy's medical report, broken wrist, minor concussion, his parents' statement about Eleanor's orders to avoid police. Eleanor cracked under questioning. "I didn't fabricate," she snapped when pressed about the email. I reframed it. The community needed this. The judge leaned forward. "Did you alter Mr. Thornton's correspondence?" Eleanor faltered. "Yes," but the judge cut her off. The verdict was brutal: guilty of fraud and trespass, liable for damages, broken tiles, stolen goods, medical bills, emotional distress. 9 years in prison, no parole, banned from HOA rolls nationwide. The HOA was fined $400,000 and ordered to retract all claims and correct every map they'd tainted. I felt no victory. Watching Eleanor lead away, still muttering about community values, I was drained like I'd fought a hurricane with a shovel. But the world shifted. The HOA sent a groveling email, titled Boundary Clarification and Apology. No more strangers lurked by my fence. I fortified the property: steel gates, biometric locks, live feed cameras to multiple servers. My new sign read, "Private property, not HOA. Trespassers prosecuted." Lit by solar LEDs, it glowed like a beacon. The neighborhood quieted. A realtor called, pitching a motivated buyer. I quoted $35 million and a handwritten apology from every HOA member. He didn't call back. The local paper ran a front-page story: one man's triumph over HOA overreach. The county launched a statewide audit of HOA practices. A small potted ivy appeared on my porch, tagged, "From one rebel to another." I kept it by the gate. The HOA's annual meeting sent a gold-embossed invite. I sent a notarized refusal, framed in oak, banning all HOA contact forever. They hung it in their clubhouse, a permanent lesson. Under my sign, I added a plaque: "This land is mine. Always will be." What do you think? Have you ever faced a bully like Eleanor, or fought tooth and nail for what's yours? Share your thoughts in the comments, especially on how far you'd go to stop injustice or protect your rights. Let's hear your stand.